Hello, I'm Edwin Newman. Welcome to the Lucy Jarvis Classics. Each of these unique programs allows us to enter a famous place never before seen by television cameras. Each has won many awards. Each was produced by an extraordinary woman whose hallmark is her ability to take her cameras where cameras have never been before. Lucy Jarvis, I suspect that the stories about these productions and how you made them are as interesting and exciting as the productions themselves. The Kremlin has always been one of the most impenetrable places in the world. It's a fortress, and it's the seat of government of the Soviet Union. Lucy, how did you ever pierce the Iron Curtain and prevail on the Russians to let you in? You were the first producer to make a film there.
Well, that's quite a story, and one of the most exciting adventures of my life. I first met Nikita Khrushchev when I was covering President Kennedy's visit to Vienna. I told the premier I wanted to film the Kremlin. 1 year later, he sent word that he was expecting me in Moscow on June 23rd. It happens to be my birthday, and I certainly didn't know he was going to do that.
So you went to Moscow. But I have the feeling, in fact, I know things didn't always happen as quickly there as you would have liked them to.
You're so right. I sat there for 2 months, and then I went to a party at the Austrian embassy and ran into Khrushchev again. This time, I was speaking in Russian. I used my time to study the language. And I asked him why I had to wait so long, and he corrected my grammar. And then suddenly he said, "You and your crew can come in next Monday. Bring your director." So I left Moscow for Paris on a Wednesday to pick up my director, Johnny Peters. However, when I went to the Russian embassy in Paris for our visas back into Russia, they said they'd never even heard of us. But I wasn't giving up. Johnny and I got on the Air France plane without visas, he kicking and screaming, and flew to Moscow.
You weren't afraid that you might wind up in Siberia?
Well, actually, when we arrived, the militia gave us a hard time. But it was Sunday, and they couldn't reach their superiors. And also, they didn't know what to make of this American woman who was dropping names and telephone numbers, and I'll have you know all of their top leaders. I took them out of a book. So they put us in a building, a holding center overnight, and in the morning, my director and I were bailed out by Andrei Gromyko.
Now, I remember, Lucy, you were shooting your film in the Kremlin during the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Right.
And at one point, NBC News became very worried because they couldn't reach you.
That's true. Normally, we worked all night after the Russians went home. One night, they didn't leave, and I was very annoyed. And the next day, our American ambassador, without revealing the full story, simply said, "President Kennedy and Khrushchev were having an argument." After the film was completed, I discussed that whole episode at the White House. And Kennedy said, "Didn't you know, Lucy? I told Khrushchev that night, if he took the missiles out of Cuba, I promised I'd get Lucy Jarvis out of the Kremlin."
A fair exchange. Maybe we ought to be sending you back for renegotiations.
Well, we did develop a relationship with the Russians of sort. And the film itself was shown to special audiences all over the Soviet Union. It was a reward for their good activities.
Now we're going to have our own reward. We're going to view one of the most impressive documentaries ever made, The Kremlin.